Captain James Walker's hands gripped the command chair as another blast rocked the station. Through the viewport, Earth's orbital defense platforms burned like dying stars against the blackness of space. The alien ships, sleek, predatory things with hulls that shimmered like oil on water, moved with terrible purpose. 15 years. That was all the time humanity had been part of the wider galactic community. 15 years to learn they were not alone, to establish diplomatic relations, to begin trading with 17 different intelligent species. 15 years was not enough time to prepare for this. Sir, Orbital Defense Station 7 is gone. 8 and 3 are critical, reported Lisa Moore, her face illuminated by the red emergency lights of the command center. Walker nodded grimly. What about the council response? His communications officer, Tom Davis, looked up from his console with disgust. They're deeply concerned about the situation and urge all parties to show restraint. He spat the words out like they were poison. Walker wasn't surprised. The Galactic Council, for all its grand talk of peace and cooperation, had rules. Lots of rules. And one of those rules was that they didn't interfere in local disputes. The Krell had carefully framed their attack as a border correction, not an invasion. Another explosion flashed outside. The Krell ships moved with practiced precision, targeting Earth's defenses methodically. They had been doing this for centuries. Humanity had been building ships for less than 2 decades. Captain, we have a message from the Krell command ship, Davis said. Walker straightened his uniform. Put it through. The main screen flickered to life. The Krell commander was tall and thin, with a hard exoskeleton that gleamed under the lights of his bridge. His 4 eyes blinked in sequence, a sign of satisfaction Walker had learned during mandatory diplomatic training. Human captain. The Krell's translator rendered his clicks and hisses into flat English. Your species occupies a strategic position in this sector. Your technology level is inadequate to hold this position. We are correcting this mistake. Walker kept his face neutral, even as rage burned inside him. The Sol system is recognized by the Galactic Council as sovereign human territory. Your actions violate 6 separate treaties. The Krell commander's mouthparts twitched in what Walker recognized as their version of laughter. Treaties protect those who can enforce them. You cannot. The Council will not. This is the way of the galaxy, human. The strong take. The weak give. The transmission cut off. Walker turned to look at the tactical display. 57 Krell warships against Earth's 32 defense platforms and 18 patrol vessels. The math was simple and brutal. Sir, Moore said quietly, Orbital Defense Stations 8 and 3 are gone. The Krell are beginning approaches to low Earth orbit. Walker closed his eyes briefly. Opening them, he gave the order he knew wouldn't save them, but might save some. Activate the New Delhi Protocol. Get as many ships away as possible. Alarms blared throughout the station as the evacuation order went out. Earth had prepared for this possibility. Hidden bunkers, evacuation ships, seed banks, and data archives, all ready to preserve something of humanity if the worst happened. As Walker coordinated the desperate retreat of Earth's surviving ships, he made a silent promise. This wouldn't be the end. Humanity wouldn't go quietly into extinction. They would learn, adapt, and return. 3 days later, the Krell declared the Sol system pacified and established a security zone around Earth. The Galactic Council formally recognized the new arrangement, offering humanity protected status as a developing species under Krell supervision. What the Krell didn't realize, what the Council couldn't imagine, was that they had made a terrible mistake. They had shown humanity exactly what the rules of the galaxy truly were. Not the rules written in treaties or proclaimed in council chambers, but the real rule. Power was all that mattered. And humans were very, very good at finding new sources of power. 5 years passed since the Krell took control of Earth's orbit. On the surface, humans played the role of the defeated race well. They followed Krell regulations, paid their protection taxes, and kept their heads down. The Krell military presence around Earth had shrunk from 50 ships to just 12. After all, why waste resources guarding a broken people? Deep within Jupiter's moon Europa, Dr. Eliza Morgan wiped sweat from her forehead as she studied the holographic display before her. The massive chamber, carved from the moon's ice over the past 5 years, hummed with activity. Hundreds of engineers and scientists worked at various stations, all focused on a single project: humanity's answer to the Krell. Dr. Morgan, the quantum field tests are complete, said Robert Green, her chief engineer. His tired eyes couldn't hide his excitement. The results are better than we hoped. Eliza smiled. Show me. Robert pulled up the test data. We've achieved a 68% phase shift without energy bleed. The ship will be nearly impossible to target when the system is active. And the graviton lance. Final calibrations are underway. The lab tests created a stable microsingularity for 3.2 seconds. More than enough time. Eliza nodded and walked to the massive viewport that overlooked the construction bay. Below, the shape of humanity's secret weapon took form. Unlike the boxy, practical designs of standard human ships, or the smooth, curved hulls of Krell vessels, this ship looked like nothing else in the galaxy. Its hull was angular in some places, curved in others, with sections that seemed to disappear from certain angles. Beautiful, isn't she? General Thomas Reed's voice came from behind her. The leader of the Phoenix Project joined Eliza at the viewport. She's almost ready, Eliza replied. 2 more weeks for final systems integration. Reed's weathered face remained serious. The Krell are getting suspicious. Their patrols have increased near Jupiter. We might not have 2 weeks. We need that time, General. The adaptive hull needs final programming, and Athena's predictive systems are still learning. Athena was the ship's artificial intelligence, named after the ancient goddess of wisdom and strategic warfare. Unlike other AIs, Athena was designed to predict enemy actions by analyzing thousands of battle scenarios per second. Do what you can, Reed said. Earth Command believes the Krell are planning something big. Our spies report they're bringing in more ships. Eliza turned from the viewport. They've discovered us. Not yet, but they've noticed our resource movements. Too many materials disappearing, too many specialists vanishing from their monitoring lists. Reed's expression darkened. And there's worse news. The Council has officially recognized the Krell's claim to our system. We're now legally a Krell protectorate. Eliza's fists clenched. They sold us out completely. They're afraid. The Krell have been expanding their territory slowly but surely. No one wants to be next. Reed looked down at the ship again. That's why we need her. Why we need the Nemesis. The name had been chosen carefully. In ancient Greek mythology, Nemesis was the goddess of retribution against those who showed arrogance before the gods. A fitting name for the ship that would bring justice to those who thought humanity defeated. A loud alarm blared, interrupting their conversation. The project's security system had detected something. Robert rushed over, his face pale. General, Dr. Morgan, we have a problem. Krell patrol ships have entered Europa's orbit. 3 of them. Reed immediately went to the command console. How did they find us? Unknown, sir, but they're scanning the moon's surface using deep penetration sensors. Eliza felt her heart race. If they discover this facility. They won't, Reed said firmly. Activate the gravity disruptors. Make them think it's just a natural anomaly in Europa's crust. As the team scrambled to hide the massive facility, Eliza looked once more at the Nemesis. They had poured everything into this ship, all their hopes, all their dreams of freedom. We need to accelerate the timeline, she said. The Nemesis launches in 1 week, ready or not. Reed nodded grimly. I'll inform Captain Walker. His crew needs to be ready. Above them, through miles of ice and the vacuum of space, the Krell ships continued their scan, unaware that beneath them lay the beginning of their end. Captain James Walker stood on the bridge of the EFS Nemesis for the first time, his footsteps echoing on the polished black floor. The bridge wasn't like anything he had seen before. Instead of the usual rows of workstations facing a main view screen, it was circular. In the center stood a raised platform with a single command chair, surrounded by a holographic projection field. Workstations curved around the edges, each manned by an officer chosen for both skill and absolute loyalty to Earth. "Welcome aboard, Captain," said a calm female voice from everywhere and nowhere at once. "I am Athena, the ship's artificial intelligence." "Hello, Athena," Walker replied, still taking in the bridge. "Are we ready for launch?" "Final preparations are underway. We are at 93% operational capacity." Walker nodded and moved to the command chair. Once seated, holographic displays sprung to life around him, showing ship systems, tactical information, and sensor data with incredible detail. "The crew is boarding now," reported Frank Miller, his first officer. 300 personnel, as ordered." Walker tapped a control, bringing up a view of the massive hangar. The Nemesis hung suspended in the center, its unusual design unlike any warship ever built. Parts of the hull seemed to shift slightly, changing angle and reflecting light differently from moment to moment. "Dr. Morgan reports the quantum field systems are online," Miller continued. "The Graviton Lance is operational but untested in real-world conditions." "Let's hope we don't need to test it anytime soon," Walker said. "This is supposed to be a shakedown cruise, not a combat mission." 6 hours later, the ESS Nemesis silently slipped out of its hidden dock within Europa. Using conventional thrusters only, it moved away from Jupiter and toward the outer solar system. No Krell patrols detected its departure, thanks to the ship's advanced stealth systems and careful timing. Once clear of Jupiter's gravity well, Walker gave the order everyone had been waiting for. "Athena, activate quantum drives." "Quantum drives online, Captain," the AI responded, calculating optimal phase shift for transit. Walker turned to his navigation officer. "Set course for the Oort cloud. We'll conduct our first tests there, away from any possible observation." "Course set, sir." "Execute." The sensation was unlike any space travel Walker had experienced before. There was no jolt, no feeling of acceleration. Instead, the view outside the ship seemed to bend slightly, like light passing through water, and suddenly they were moving at incredible speed. "Quantum drive functioning at optimal parameters," Athena reported. "We will reach the designated testing area in 53 minutes. Walker relaxed slightly. They had done it. The most advanced ship in human history was working as designed. "Begin system tests," he ordered. "I want to know exactly what this ship can do." For the next 6 hours, the crew put the Nemesis through a series of increasingly complex maneuvers. The adaptive hull proved capable of reconfiguring itself to optimize performance based on conditions. The quantum fields allowed the ship to partially phase out of normal spacetime, making it nearly invisible to standard sensors. "Sir," called out Eric Jones from the sensor station, his voice suddenly tense. "I'm picking up ships entering the test area." Walker straightened in his chair. "Krell." "Yes, sir. A scout fleet. 12 vessels." "How did they find us?" "Unknown, sir. They appear to be on a standard patrol route. I don't think they know we're here." Walker considered his options. The Nemesis was untested in combat. They could activate the full quantum field and simply escape. The Krell would never be able to follow. But then another thought struck him. Here was a chance to see what the Nemesis could really do. "Battle stations," Walker ordered quietly. "Maintain stealth configuration. Let's see what they do." The Krell ships moved in a standard search pattern, sweeping the area with sensors. Suddenly, one of them adjusted course, heading directly toward the Nemesis. "They've detected us," Miller said. "Impossible," Dr. Morgan's voice came over the comm. She had been monitoring from engineering. "Our quantum field is active. They're using some kind of gravity detection system," Jones reported. "They can't see us, but they can detect our mass." The Krell ship continued to approach and then fired a warning shot. a lower-powered energy beam that passed harmlessly over the Nemesis. "They're hailing all ships in the area," the communications officer announced. "Standard Krell challenge." Walker took a deep breath. For 5 years, humanity had hidden and prepared. Now the moment of truth had arrived sooner than expected. "Athena, bring all systems to combat readiness," he ordered. "Let's show the Krell what humanity has been working on." The lead Krell ship fired again, this time with more power. The energy beam should have torn through any normal vessel's shields. Instead, it passed harmlessly through the space where the Nemesis appeared to be. "Quantum field at 72% phase shift," Athena reported calmly. "The enemy weapon cannot interact with our current phase state." Walker smiled grimly. "Weapon status. Conventional weapons ready. Graviton lance charging. Will be ready in 40 seconds. Target the lead vessel with conventional weapons. Fire when ready." The Nemesis weapons were hidden within its shifting hull. Panels moved aside, revealing sleek gun barrels that tracked the lead Krell ship. When they fired, the energy beams were not the standard blue of human weapons or the green of Krell technology. They were a deep purple, almost black. The beams struck the Krell ship's shields, which flickered and failed instantly. The hull beneath cracked open like an egg, atmosphere venting into space. "Direct hit," reported the weapons officer. "Enemy vessel disabled." The other Krell ships reacted immediately, forming a defensive pattern and firing in all directions, hoping to hit the Nemesis by chance. "They can't target us properly," Miller observed. "Their sensors can't lock on." "Athena, what is the Krell communication status?" Walker asked. "They are sending emergency signals to their fleet. Estimated response time for Krell reinforcements, 22 minutes. Walker nodded. That was time enough. "Target the next 3 largest ships. Fire at will." The Nemesis moved like a ghost through the Krell formation. Its weapons struck with surgical precision, disabling ship after ship without completely destroying them. Walker had given strict orders. This was to be a demonstration, not a massacre. "Graviton lance charged and ready, Captain," Athena announced. Walker hesitated. The Graviton lance was their most powerful weapon, designed to create a temporary singularity that could tear apart matter at the subatomic level. It had never been tested against an actual target. "Target the largest remaining Krell vessel," he ordered. "Minimum power setting. Target locked. Graviton lance at minimum power. Fire." There was no beam, no visible projectile. Instead, space itself seemed to bend around the targeted Krell ship. For a moment, nothing happened. Then the vessel began to twist, its hull compressing as if being crushed by an invisible hand. Within seconds, it imploded, crushed into a ball of dense matter before the effect dissipated. Silence fell over the Nemesis bridge. Even Walker, who had known what the weapon could do in theory, was shocked by its effectiveness. "All remaining Krell vessels are retreating at maximum speed," Jones reported, his voice barely above a whisper. "Let them go," Walker ordered. "They'll tell the others what they saw here today." And they did. Within hours, news of the battle spread throughout the Krell fleet. A single unknown vessel had defeated 12 Krell ships without taking a single hit. The Krell commanders demanded to know what they were facing. By the time the Nemesis returned to Europa, the entire galaxy was buzzing with rumors. The Galactic Council called an emergency meeting. Representatives from all 17 species gathered in the Grand Chamber on the neutral world of Nexus. "We have received disturbing reports," announced Council Elder Thorn, the ancient representative of the Alphar species. His thin body seemed even more frail under the weight of his ceremonial robes. "The humans have developed a warship unlike any seen before." The Krell ambassador slammed his fist on the table. This vessel used weapons that violate 6 separate technology treaties. It created a localized singularity. Such weapons were banned millennia ago for good reason. Walker, now wearing his dress uniform, stood before the council alongside Earth's ambassador. He remained silent as the accusations flew. "The Nemesis was built for our defense. the human ambassador argued. After the Krell invaded our system, and the Council did nothing, what choice did we have? This is not about your security, Elder Thorn replied, his voice soft but firm. This is about galactic stability. For thousands of years, we have maintained peace by ensuring that no species gains a significant technological advantage over the others. The chamber erupted in arguments. Some species supported Earth's right to defend itself. Others demanded immediate sanctions. In the end, the vote was 16-1. The Council officially classified the Nemesis as prohibited technology and demanded its immediate decommissioning. As Walker left the chamber, Elder Thorn approached him privately. The ancient alien's eyes held something Walker hadn't expected, not anger, but fear. "You don't understand what you've done," Thorn whispered. "The balance of power has remained stable for 12,000 years. Your ship could change everything." Walker met the alien's gaze steadily. "Maybe everything needs to change." Admiral Helen Stone waited in the secure underground command center beneath what remained of the old United Nations building in New York. The room was protected by layers of advanced technology, making it one of the few places on Earth where humans could speak freely without Krell surveillance. "They want us to destroy the Nemesis," she said, reading the official council order again. "They've given us 30 days to comply and allow inspectors to verify its destruction." Around the table sat Earth's remaining military and political leaders. 5 years of Krell occupation had changed them all. They looked older, harder, but there was a new fire in their eyes since news of the Nemesis' success had reached them. "And if we refuse?" asked President Michael Harris. "Economic sanctions at first," replied Stone. "Then military action if we don't comply." Walker, who had returned to Earth after the council meeting, leaned forward. "The council is divided. Not all species support the Krell. Some were impressed by what the Nemesis did." "Impressed enough to help us?" Harris asked. Walker shook his head. "Not openly. But I received unofficial messages from 3 different council representatives. They're interested in discussions." Stone nodded. "They want our technology." "Yes, the Barani, the Tellarites, and the Morn have all indicated they would consider protection agreements in exchange for limited access to the quantum field technology." The room fell silent as everyone considered the implications. For 12,000 years, the Galactic Council had maintained a delicate balance of power by ensuring that all species had roughly equivalent technology. No one species could dominate the others. Now, humans had upset that balance. "What about the Krell?" Harris finally asked. "They won't just accept this." "No," Stone agreed. "Our intelligence suggests they're already mobilizing their fleet. Not just a few ships this time. Their entire battle force." The room's main display activated, showing a strategic map of the solar system and surrounding space. Red dots appeared, representing Krell vessels moving toward Earth. 2,117 warships, Stone continued. "The largest fleet movement in the galaxy in over 5,000 years, according to our historical records." Walker studied the display grimly. "The Nemesis is powerful, but not that powerful. We can't fight them all." "No," Stone agreed, "we can't." Then she smiled, the expression cold and determined. "Not with just one Nemesis." She tapped a control, and the display changed to show Europa again. In the secret construction bay where the Nemesis had been built, 4 more partially completed hulls were now visible. After the Nemesis launched, Dr. Morgan and her team kept working, Stone explained. "Using the data from your shakedown cruise, they'd been refining the design. These ships aren't complete, but how long until they're ready?" Walker asked, hope rising in his voice. "That's the problem. Normally, 3 months at least. But the Krell will be here in 30 days. President Harris stood up, his decision made. "Then we have 30 days to do 3 months of work. Transfer every available resource to Europa. Every engineer, every scientist, every worker who can hold a tool. The Krell think we're beaten, that we'll surrender the Nemesis to save ourselves. He looked around the table. They're wrong. Over the next days, humanity mobilized in secret, using the cover of regular supply ships. Thousands of workers were smuggled to Europa. The Nemesis itself remained mobile, conducting hit-and-run attacks on isolated Krell outposts before disappearing again, keeping the enemy distracted and confused. Meanwhile, diplomatic channels buzzed with activity. Earth's representatives met secretly with envoys from several Council species. Some sought technology. Others offered subtle support. The balance of power that had defined galactic politics for millennia was shifting. The Burani ambassador met Walker in a quiet corner of the Mars colony. The tall, insect-like alien's compound eyes reflected the dim light as he spoke. "My government cannot openly support Earth," he said, his translator rendering his clicks into English. "But we can ensure that certain supply ships are not inspected too carefully." "We appreciate that," Walker replied carefully. "You must understand, Captain. What your nemesis represents, it changes everything. For 12,000 years, technology has remained relatively static. Advances were slow, controlled. Your species has broken that pattern." Walker nodded. "We had no choice." "Perhaps not. But now all species must choose. Support the old order or embrace change. It is unsettling." As the Burani left, Walker received an urgent message from Admiral Stone. The Krell fleet had accelerated its timetable. They would reach the Sol system in just 20 days. The race to complete Earth's new fleet had just gotten more desperate. The Krell Supreme Commander stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Conqueror. His exoskeleton gleamed under the harsh lights as he studied the tactical display showing the largest fleet the Krell had assembled in 2,000 years. 2,117 warships, all converging on the Sol system. "The humans have been given every opportunity to comply with Council directives," he told the assembled officers. "They have refused. Their defiance cannot be tolerated." His second-in-command, a battle-scarred veteran named Crix, nodded in agreement. "The Nemesis vessel must be destroyed, Supreme Commander. Its technology represents a threat to Krell dominance." What neither of them said aloud was the fear that had spread through the Krell military since the reports of the Nemesis capabilities had reached them. For centuries, the Krell had maintained their position through superior numbers and disciplined tactics, not technological advantage. The thought of facing a fleet of ships like the Nemesis terrified them. Meanwhile, at the Galactic Council chambers, Earth's ambassador faced increasing pressure. Council Elder Thorn had called a special closed session with just the human representative and the leaders of the 4 oldest Council species. "You must understand your position," Thorn said, his ancient voice barely above a whisper. "The Krell have formally invoked the protection clause of the Council Charter. They claim that the Nemesis represents an existential threat to their species." "That's absurd," the human ambassador replied. "We built one ship to defend ourselves after they invaded our system." "Nevertheless," continued the Morax representative, whose crystalline body refracted light across the chamber, "the charter is clear. If the Council recognizes an existential threat, we are obligated to act. The Krell have given you 20 days to surrender the Nemesis and all related technology," Thorn explained. "If you refuse, they will withdraw from the Council and attack your system with their full fleet." "And what will the Council do if that happens?" the ambassador asked, already knowing the answer. The representatives exchanged uncomfortable glances. Finally, Thorn spoke the truth. "Nothing. We cannot intervene in what would then be classified as a bilateral dispute." The ambassador stood. "Just as you did nothing when the Krell invaded us 5 years ago. Some things never change." As he turned to leave, Thorn spoke again. "Ambassador, please convey to your government that this goes beyond politics. The technology your people have developed. There's a reason such weapons were banned millennia ago." "What reason?" "The last time a species developed graviton weapons, 3 inhabited worlds were destroyed. Billions died. The resulting war lasted for 200 years. Back on the Nemesis, Captain Walker received the reports from both the Council and the approaching Krell fleet. The ship was currently hiding in the asteroid belt, running silent. The quantum field technology made them virtually undetectable. 20 days, he said to Dr. Morgan, who had joined him on the bridge. How close are the new ships to completion? The hulls are finished, she replied. The quantum field generators are installed and functional. The adaptive systems are at about 70%. The main problem is the weapons systems, especially the graviton lenses. We've had to cut corners, and they're not as refined as yours. Will they work? She hesitated. Yes, but they're more unstable. We can't control the singularity effect as precisely. There's a higher risk of collateral damage. Walker understood what she wasn't saying. The weapons might be too destructive, too dangerous to use except in the most desperate circumstances. What about the AIs? He asked. We've copied Athena's core programming, but the new systems haven't had time to learn, to develop predictive capabilities. They're like children compared to her. Walker nodded, taking it all in. 4 new ships, powerful but flawed, against 2,000 Krell warships. Admiral Stone is implementing the rest of the plan, he said after a moment. The Nemesis will depart tomorrow. Dr. Morgan looked surprised. Depart? To where? Krell space. If we're going to fight, better to do it on our terms, not theirs. He smiled grimly. The Krell think they're the hunters. Time to show them what it feels like to be hunted. As Dr. Morgan returned to Europa to continue work on the new ships, Walker sat alone in his quarters. He pulled up the galactic map, studying the Krell Empire, dozens of star systems, hundreds of worlds. Their military bases, shipyards, and command centers were all carefully marked from intelligence gathered over the past 5 years. One ship against an empire. The odds were impossible. But then, humanity specialized in beating impossible odds. Athena's voice came over the comm. Course plotted for the Krell homeworld, Captain. Ready when you are. Walker took a deep breath. Let's go change the galaxy, Athena. 17 precise jumps across Krell space. 17 targets. 17 demonstrations of power. The Nemesis struck like a ghost. One moment, a major Krell shipyard would be operating normally. The next, its central facilities would implode, crushed by a carefully controlled graviton field. Before the Krell could respond, the ship would be gone, leaving confusion and fear in its wake. Walker had been careful to minimize casualties. They targeted military installations, weapons depots, and command centers, always giving time for evacuation when possible. This wasn't about revenge. It was about sending a message. On the 10th day, as the Nemesis prepared to jump to its next target, Walker received an urgent transmission from Admiral Stone. The Krell fleet has changed course, she reported. They're returning to defend their core worlds. Your plan is working, Captain. Walker allowed himself a small smile. How are our new ships coming? They'll be ready. Just keep the Krell distracted for a few more days. The Krell Supreme Commander raged as another report of destruction came in. The mighty Krell Empire, which had subjugated dozens of worlds over centuries, was being humiliated by a single human vessel they couldn't even detect properly. All ships return to protect the homeworld, he ordered. I want that human vessel found and destroyed, no matter the cost. His second-in-command, Crix, approached cautiously. Supreme Commander, our fleet is scattered. The humans have struck 17 targets across our territory. They seem to know all our defensive positions. It's impossible. How can one ship do this much damage? The answer, of course, was that the Nemesis had spent years gathering intelligence while humanity planned its response to the Krell invasion. Every weakness, every vulnerability had been carefully noted and exploited. On Earth, Admiral Stone stood in the control center of the Europa facility. Before her, on the massive construction floor, stood 4 vessels that resembled the Nemesis. Not identical, each had modifications, improvements based on the data collected by the original ship. "Status report," she ordered. "The Defiance, Vengeance, Justice, and Liberty are at 92% operational capacity," reported Dr. Morgan. "Not perfect, but they'll fight. Crew status: trained and ready. We've distributed experienced officers from our conventional fleet to provide leadership, with technical specialists to handle the new systems." Stone nodded. "And the Krell?" "Still searching their territory for the Nemesis. They have no idea we've built more ships." At that moment, across the solar system, the Nemesis made its final jump, directly into orbit around the Krell homeworld. For 6 hours, it simply remained there, easily avoiding the few defensive ships present, making no hostile moves. The message was clear: we could strike at your heart at any time. Then, as suddenly as it had appeared, the Nemesis vanished again, jumping back to the Sol system. When the Krell fleet finally arrived at Earth 13 days later, they found not one Nemesis, but 5. The ships formed a defensive line between the approaching fleet and the planet. On the bridge of the Conqueror, the Supreme Commander stared at the tactical display in disbelief. How is this possible? They couldn't have built 4 more so quickly. But they had, and now the Krell faced a terrible choice: retreat and lose face, or attack and face weapons they couldn't counter. Pride won out over prudence. All ships, attack formation. Destroy those vessels at all costs. The battle that followed would be studied in military academies across the galaxy for centuries to come. The 5 human vessels, though outnumbered 400 to 1, moved like dancers through the Krell formation. Their quantum fields made them nearly impossible to hit, while their advanced targeting systems allowed them to strike with surgical precision. The graviton lances, even the less stable versions on the newer ships, proved devastating. Krell vessels imploded, their matter compressed to tiny fractions of their original size. After 3 hours, the Krell had lost over 400 ships without inflicting significant damage on any of the human vessels. The Supreme Commander finally gave the order to retreat. 2 weeks later, the Galactic Council convened an emergency session. The chamber was tense as representatives from all 17 species gathered. Elder Thorn spoke first, his ancient voice carrying surprising strength. "The humans have demonstrated that the balance of power we have maintained for millennia is at an end. They have 5 vessels that can defeat entire fleets. The question before us is, what now?" Earth's ambassador stood. "Humanity didn't ask for this war. We didn't ask to have our system invaded, our people killed. We only wanted to live in peace. Yet you now possess the most powerful weapons the galaxy has seen in 12,000 years, the Morax representative pointed out. "Yes, and we're prepared to share aspects of this technology, under strict oversight, as part of a new Council defense initiative. Not to conquer, but to ensure that what happened to Earth never happens to any peaceful world again." The debate lasted for weeks. In the end, the ban on the Nemesis-class ships was lifted, but with strict conditions. Earth would lead a new Council defense force, with ships staffed by officers from multiple species. The technology would be shared gradually, under careful supervision. As Captain Walker stood on the Nemesis observation deck, watching representatives from 17 species tour his vessel, he reflected on how quickly everything had changed. In just 20 years, humanity had gone from discovering they weren't alone in the universe to becoming one of its most important protectors. Elder Thorn approached him, studying the ship's quantum field generators with obvious fascination. "Perhaps," the ancient diplomat said with what seemed like a smile, "being too advanced is precisely what this galaxy needed." Walker nodded, watching the stars through the viewport. "A reminder that progress shouldn't be feared," he replied. "Sometimes, the rules need to change for everyone to move forward." The Nemesis, once outlawed, had become the symbol of a new era. Humanity had found its place among the stars, not as conquerors, but as innovators who had challenged the galaxy to grow beyond its comfortable stagnation. And grow it would.